Euclid, the elements. We are more or less in the year 300 BC. The Romans have just built their first aqueduct, bringing running water to their cities and allowing Roman citizens to bathe inside their homes. In China, they have just invented a weapon that will revolutionize the art of war and is wreaking havoc wherever it goes: the triggered crossbow. Around that time, we're not sure which year, somewhere in Greece, Euclid of Alexandria is born. He will be one of the most influential figures in human history, thanks to a book he wrote. By this time, the Greeks had already been thinking hard about philosophy and science and the mysteries of the universe. Ever since about 300 years before, a mysterious and enigmatic figure had coined the term philosopher, which literally meant lover of wisdom. His name, Pythagoras. We don't know too much about Euclid or his life. We don't even have portraits or sculptures of him to get an idea of what he looked like. He could have been short, tall, fat, skinny, ugly, pretty, hairy, or bald. We'll never know. What we do know is that his family was wealthy because he went to Plato's academy in Athens, where only the children of the wealthiest citizens went. We also know that Euclid spent a lot of time in Alexandria, Egypt, which was the New York City of its time. Everyone wanted to be in Alexandria, which had its famous lighthouse, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and it also housed the biggest and best library in the world. Alexandria was a city with a very turbulent history. Founded by Alexander the Great, who named it after himself, of course, the city was always under siege, mainly because of its strategic position. It was burned to the ground and rebuilt at least 5 times since its construction. In the streets of a peaceful Alexandria of 2,300 years ago, Euclid took long walks, prepared lectures for classes at the university he himself helped found, and had time to write one of the most important, influential, and successful books of all time. A book millions of students have known, many of them love, and many of them hate. Nobody's perfect. It's called Euclid's Elements. The Elements contains a plethora of definitions, postulates, proofs, and geometrical theorems. It has been studied in schools and universities all around the world for over 2,000 years, just the way it was written. The geometry described in Euclid's Elements is the same geometry we use today, and we refer to it as Euclidean geometry in honor of him. In order to write the Elements, Euclid gathered all the knowledge of his time. This included the work of Pythagoras and his famous theorem. It included Eudoxus, the inventor of mathematical astronomy, Hippasus, the discoverer of irrational numbers, Hippocrates of Chios, who is credited with the method of reductio ad absurdum, otherwise known as proof by contradiction. No copies of the Elements exists because all the originals were burned in the third fire of the library at Alexandria. Euclid's Elements has reached us thanks to taking many different translations and versions of the original text and painstakingly comparing them to distill the original. It has survived ancient wars, the Middle Ages, the Renaissance, and the Industrial Revolution to arrive safely in modern world of wireless communications. The most important scientists in history have all used math from Euclid's Elements to make their own discoveries. Galileo used it to study falling objects. Kepler used it for his 3 laws of motion. And Isaac Newton used it to study gravity. Einstein discovered his scientific vocation the day his parents gave him 2 presents: a compass and a copy of Euclid's Elements. But Euclid's geometry is not the only one that exists. There are different non-Euclidean geometries that have been discovered throughout history. Einstein's theory of relativity and map drawing are 2 very good examples of non-Euclidean geometries. They were discovered when mathematicians tried to prove one of the theorems of the Elements and failed. For any given line L and point A not on that line, there is only one line through A that does not intersect L, the parallel line. Euclid's Elements is the second most published book in the world, after the Bible, of course. It's made up of 13 separate books that were all originally probably written on parchment paper. One fine day, Euclid was teaching King Ptolemy geometry, and the king, tired and dizzy, asked if there was a quicker way to learn all this. Euclid replied, "There is no easy royal road to geometry." And that's because the study of science makes all men equal. Euclid was a student of Plato, one of the greatest Greek philosophers ever, famous for his allegory of the cave. He was also Archimedes' professor, famous for the principle that bears his name.
If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants.
Like Newton said, in science, each generation learns from the previous generation and teaches the next. That's how it's been, and that's how it will be. Euclid has a crater on the moon named after him. We know so little about Euclid that some people believe the Elements was actually written by a group of mathematicians using the name Euclid as a pseudonym. We'll probably never know more about him. He is and will always be a mystery.